Spelljammer is a wild mix of space opera, high fantasy, and pure, unadulterated weirdness. But its journey has been anything but smooth. There's been drama and controversy galore, not least of which because of the relatively recent reboot by Wizards of the Coast. So in this video, we're going to dive into what makes this bizarre setting tick, its tumultuous history, and where everything's at today to explore whatever happened to Spelljammer. Hi everyone, my name is Otto, and welcome to Exits and Standards. We will be exploring series, franchises, and more after their prime time has seemingly come to an end. If that sounds good to you, there's a like and subscribe button below, and an enormous shout out to my patrons who keep this channel alive. You guys rock. So, how do you describe Spelljammer? Well, easy. It's D&D in space. And honestly, what more do you even need than that? Because if that alone isn't enough to launch your imagination into overdrive, I don't know what is. But if you want a little more flair, people have called it the deranged love child of Dungeons and Dragons and Star Trek, or Treasure Planet cranked up to 11. Or some just simply sum it up as a giant, glorious WTF, and none of them are wrong. But if you're still not convinced, this is why you should care. Spelljammer is one of the most wildly imaginative, no limits sandboxes ever made. Want some cosmic Lovecraftian horror? Sure. Space clowns? Absolutely. Giant space hamsters? Why not? Throw them in there. Alright, so let's take a step back and actually unpack this wonderfully quirky, chaotic setting. First things first, if you're thinking space equals science, take all of your hard sci-fi expectations and throw them out the window. Seriously, Spelljammer, yes, is in space, but it's all fantasy and all magic, which is a combination we don't get nearly enough of. Sure, spaceships and guns exist, but they're powered by magic. This is high fantasy space, and that mix of ideas creates some really incredible possibilities that the original developers absolutely nailed. So, what actually is Spelljammer, and what does it even mean? Well, like everything in the setting, even that can quickly get chaotic because the name itself pulls a triple duty. It's A, the title of the setting, B, the name of a legendary one-of-a-kind spacefaring ship, and C, the verb referring to the act of spelljamming itself. And spelljamming, the verb, I mean, is kind of the key that ties together all the wild, sprawling concepts and ideas of the setting. So the act of spelljamming itself is pretty simple. It's essentially
The call of long-lost grace speaks to us all.
Spelljammer element, which you think of as a magical captain's chair that can look however wild or forms, which is
Horaloo,
Spelljammer,
chieftain of the Badlands,
and every ship
the ever-brilliant Gold Mask. Fear, the deathbed companion, the loathsome dung-eater, and Sir Gideon Othmere, the all-knowing.
Or maybe you're more of a traditionalist, and you could go with a straight-up 17th century galleon. That's right, pretty much just a regular old ship, but in space. Then there's the legendary ship, the Spelljammer itself, which is kind of the holy grail of the setting. It's a sentient ship
And one
alien
other
awareness and looks like an enormous
whom
manta ray
grace
with
would
a on its
again
back that the
bless.
ship itself kind of mind controls. And honestly, I could spend 30 minutes alone
Tarnished
just talking about
of
this
no
one ship because it
renown.
really does deserve it. But my personal favorite is probably the Titanic Dwarven Citadel ship, which is completely next
Across
level.
the fall
Basically, picture a colossal
to
rock
the
in the shape of
lands
a
between.
giant dwarf face, bristling with heavy weapons like catapults and other medieval style death
stand
machines,
before
carrying an
the
entire clan
Elden
of
Ring.
dwarves who are ready to blow anything out of space. It's just so over the top and
And
ridiculous.
become
I love it. And
the
speaking of
Elden
ship
Lord.
combat, this is a huge part of the setting. We're talking ballistas, cannons, and when all else fails, good old-fashioned boarding party. Now, you might be wondering, wait, how does shipboarding or a straight-up galleon even work in space? Which, to be fair, is an excellent question, and if it's somehow not clear to you by now, Spelljammer is basically one long to physics, but that's not to say it doesn't at least try to explain how all this is possible, and it does it in a very D&D way. Every ship basically has its own air and gravity envelope, so gravity in Spelljammer is very accommodating is probably the best way to put it, because it pulls from which way is, quote, that which is most convenient. So, for example, if you have an Earth-like planet, the pull would be from the center. Or, using the galleon I mentioned earlier as an example, gravity would be in a straight line through the center, so technically you could walk upside down on the bottom of the ship. As far as air, every person carries their own little bubble of air and gravity, which can run out. Now imagine all this wild, gravity-defying shenanigans that could happen during a space battle. It's chaos, it's magic, especially when you add other ships in close proximity that may influence the gravitational pull of your own ship, and it's all just generally awesome stuff. Now, it's important to note that although these ships are racial and built by or for specific races, technically most races can pilot most of the ships with the correct know-how. Because why wouldn't you want to see a GIF, who we'll get to in a second, and are basically giant hippo people, at the helm of a giant space galleon? Now, you best believe that the races in Spelljammer are as varied, chaotic, and unhinged as the rest of the setting in the best possible way. Now, naturally, you've got your fantasy staples like humans, dwarves, and elves, but as with everything in the setting, these come with a twist. The elves, for example, have their usual superiority complex, because of course they do, but this time they've got a massive imperial navy to back up those claims of superiority. They're highly organized and control large portions of space, enforcing their rule with military precision. But it's really the unique races that make Spelljammer shine, and none are more beloved or gloriously ridiculous than the gift. Imagine a 9-foot tall humanoid hippo, now dressed up like a British redcoat, complete with military regalia. They're a proud, loyal, and hilariously serious warrior race, obsessed with uniforms, honors, and blowing things up with guns and cannon. And it's a fan favorite for good reason. I mean, redcoat space hippos, what's there not to love? But it's not all funs and games, because we also have the genuinely horrifying Yogi. These little horrors are a twisted combination of spider and eel flying around in death spider spaceships, which yes is a thing. They're a slaving race that pretty much views most other races as slave potential. And fun fact, when a Yogi grows too old, their own kind attack them with poison, triggering a grotesque transformation into a giant bloated monstrosity that eventually explodes, releasing a fresh batch of baby Yogi to continue the cycle. Delightful. Now, ever wondered where Baldur's Gate 3's Mongoloid ships came from? That's right, the Mind Flayers were cruising the cosmos in Spelljammer long, long before, complete with their creepy.
Don't worry, Torrent.
Then there are the Beholders with their
Fortune is on his side.
Not all are bad eggs. Most notably,
we found him here, after all.
Beholder settled down to become the proprietor, bartender, and bouncer of his tavern, the Happy Beholder, which is wholesome stuff, and I just love the idea of a bartender beholder. Now, because
one
the
of his
universe
kind
nature
is
of
sure to
setting,
seek
you technically could have
the
almost
Elden
any
ring.
race in here, and we even got the Thry Queen from Dark Sun, those endearingly weird insect-like creatures who are obsessed with the hunt. But here's the kicker. Races in Spelljammer aren't static. They kind of rise and fall all the time. The orcs and goblinoid races, for example, were once a major force, but they were crushed by the elves in the Unhuman Wars. Now, the monsters of Spelljammer are just as weird and wonderful as everything else in the setting. Honestly, this roster might be one of the most chaotic collections of creatures in all of D&D, and it's glorious. Sure, everyone loves the iconic Spelljammer giant space hamster, and fair enough, it's a giant hamster in space, but that is just the tip of the iceberg. Let's start with the Autognomes, who, to be fair, are not exactly a monster, but still, imagine a mechanical gnome made of gears, pulleys, and a dash of magic, and is a little clockwork construct that looks like something out of a steampunk fever dream. They're programmed with directives, and one of their primary commands is to defend babies and children from harm, which is sweet, right? Except the directive doesn't specify which species, so if an Autognome sees an adult elf fighting a baby beholder, guess who's getting pummeled? But to be fair, I'm sure baby beholders are kind of cute in their own nightmarish way. Then there's the Albari, which is a magical space bird that is, quote, dedicated to the cause of chaos, which is pretty metal. But my personal favorite has to be the Murderoid, which is exactly what it sounds like, a murderous asteroid. Keep it simple, I guess. Now, you might be wondering, with all these insane space monstrosities, can we at least fire some cannons at them? Well, yes and no. Remember earlier when I mentioned cannons do exist, but they are rare? Well, there's good reason for that, and that is one of the most defining features of Spelljammer, also known as the Rainbow Ocean. The Phlogiston is an endless sea of swirling, ever-shifting colors. Beautiful? Yes. Safe? Absolutely not. Not even close. Here's how it works. In In the earlier editions of Spelljammer, every D&D world existed inside a massive crystal sphere, kind of like a giant cosmic D&D snow globe. Each sphere contains its own solar system with its own sun, but this is D&D, so not all suns are just big flaming balls. You could also have like 8 suns in there, whatever your fancy is. Anyway, let's take Kryn as an example, the world of Dragonlance. Its entire solar system floats inside a crystal sphere called imaginatively Kryn space, and the sphere itself drifts through the phlogiston, kind of like cork spots in the ocean, and over time they move closer or further away from each other. Luckily, the rainbow rivers within the phlogiston stay relatively consistent, which makes navigation possible, and the density and speed of the phlogiston can vary quite a bit, so skilled pilots can use it to their advantage for faster travel, which is helpful, right? But there is a catch. Highly heavy, I'm talking light a spark and everyone dies, kind of flammable. So please, for love of all that's good, no fireballs in the phlogiston. And this is the reason why ballista and other non-powder-based weapons are much more common. And yes, I hear you, well actually guy in the back, the phlogiston changed a lot in later editions, and don't worry about adjustments. Now, while the phlogiston is the space between the spheres, wild space is the void within each sphere. So the black and nothingness of space is void, and the social themselves sail these spaces, exploring, trading, and inevitably running into trouble. And the best part about this is that Spelljammer connects all the different worlds. Their party could be fresh off saving the Forgotten Realms, thinking they're hot stuff, and boom, suddenly they're in space on a Colossus floating giant dome. He's on his planet trying to catch his pet giant space worm, which is a real setup from books, by the way. And in this way, the sense of scale in Spelljammer is just an amazing part of it. Sure, your party might be a big deal in Waterdeep, but in the universe, not so much. And on top of this, there are all types of hilarious and creative ways to get your adventurers into orbit, from giant space balloons, sky ladders, you name it, it's there. But it is important to note that not every world is accessible. Darksun and Ravenloft were completely cut off for both real-world logistical and in-universe reasons. So this delightfully obscure yet oddly beautiful description of the phlogiston and the Spelljammer universe opens the door to infinite possibilities, and just the sheer creative freedom it offers is pretty unparalleled. There's room for everything in here, and even a place called Doomspace, which is a D&D black hole-like realm. When it comes to worlds, the variety is truly glorious. Sure, you got your standard Earth-like planets, but that's really just the beginning. There are worlds made entirely of fire, endless air worlds where Cloud City dreams become reality, and if all that's too tame for you, how about a giant space world? A flat world, or just a giant tree solar system with each of the planets being like a little fruit growing from the tree. And this is one of the best things about Spelljammer, because it pretty much just says to you, the player, you know what, go crazy. Want to build your own solar system or planet? Go for it. There's actually an entire system in place to design worlds of all shapes, sizes, and types. The framework is all there, just waiting for you to dream it up. And all the other world building in Spelljammer is just an absolute blast. One of the major hubs is a giant asteroid city bustling with life, and there are all these other hidden ports scattered across the different worlds, including even secret harbors in water. Oh, and did I mention empires? Yes, there are space empires in this delightfully dark space, which has its very own Ravenloft Strahd, but on space steroids. And there's just all types of interesting secrets and clues, and with a really fleshed out map that more and more your imagination. There's Hero Space, home to a powerful fleet of Spelljammer heroes, and Fairy Space with that I mentioned earlier, where you can technically walk from one end of the system to another. There's also interesting but often ignored twist with clerics, where if you leave your home here, you lose your connection to God. And in the Phlogiston, divine magic is cut off entirely.
Oh, come to the. Of course, you. Unfortunately, without God, you are fake. Me. Are you familiar? You may also that. It will lead, even if it. Great. To castle, the home. It's to castle. If you.
Right down to the package. They're perfect for treating yourself or as a gift for that special adventure in your life. There's something a bit special. So check out Candy Goblin in the link below and let me know which ones you pick. So how did this all start? Well, let's go way back to the beginning, when Dungeons and Dragons first launched in 1974 under a company called TSR. The game was super bare bones, with no pre-written adventure, and the idea was to leave everything up to the player's imagination, because why limit creativity constraints? Let the dungeon masters have fun. But throughout the 70s and 80s, TSR expanded rapidly, and adventures and settings became really popular, and TSR decided to cash in and pump out new products and campaigns at an almost unhinged pace. And some of them don't touch releases in a single year, and it was a spectacular haul. Eventually swapping it by the number. Yet, in a strange way, we should be thankful for TSR's turbulent years, because it was at this time of relentless releases and experimentations that gave us some of D&D's most beloved settings like Planescape, Dark Sun, and of course, Spelljammer. So, how did such a wildly innovative and downright bizarre setting like Spelljammer come to life? Well, it almost didn't happen at all. The whole concept was the brainchild of Jeff Ross, a longtime D&D designer, and his original pitch was simple: a fully armored knight standing on a giant ship in space. The idea was simple as it was ridiculous. Sword and sorcery adventures, but with outer space tropes. And by all accounts, he would have a tough time selling it. And interestingly, it could have taken a massive turn, because none other than Jeff Cook, later known for his incredible work on Planescape, was almost given creative control. But eventually, Grubb took over, and in 1989, Spelljammer officially launched as a D&D campaign set. Now, the influences behind it were as varied as its premise. Grubb drew inspiration from everything from classic sci-fi cartoons like Space Ghost to real-world scientific theories. Logistic, for example, was named after a real 17th century theory, and the concept of crystal spheres enclosing entire worlds came from the art of discoverers. But more than anything, Spelljammer was designed to break the mold of what D&D can be. Spelljammer launched in 1989 with the release of the Advanced Dungeons and Dragons Adventures in Space box set, which became the Bible of the setting. It had absolutely everything you needed: a detailed guide to space travel, iconic ships, and wonderfully weird creatures. You also got a bunch of other gorgeous goodies like deck plans and massive color maps. And all of this was and still is a beautiful, ridiculous treasure trove of content. Now, from there, the line expanded with box sets like Legend of the Spelljammer, which explored the mythic living ship, the Spelljammer itself. Then there was the Astromundi Cluster in 1993, which is a fan favorite that now, no D&D setting is without monsters, and Spelljammer delivered. The monstrous compendiums from 1990 and 1991 introduced some of the weirdest, most delightful dark Spider Asteroid, which is, you guessed it, Spider Asteroid. Don't know how else to describe that one. So TSR was deep in its D&D adventure forever setting phase at this time. So Spelljammer got a you got Wild Space in 1990, which was the first, and all parties actually launched into space. Skulls and Crossbows brought space pirates into the mix, and Crystal Spheres had the party stopping a space vampire from blocking out the sun, which Skyrim Dawnguard care to explain. We also got accessories detailing some of the specific spheres. So, for example, Space was exactly what it sounds like, and looked at the solar system of Krynn. Another important one to mention is the Rock of Thrall, which is kind of the Mos Eisley hub of the setting, where all manners of people and events could come together. But all good things must come to an end, and by 1993, it looked like TSR was shifting focus, with Planescape set to kind of take Spelljammer's place in the market as the new world-spanning setting. And for a while, it really looked like Spelljammer had sailed off into the cosmic sunset, and it not look great acquired TSR in 1997. And they took one look at the mountain of bizarre settings, space hamsters, and flying ships, and seemed to collectively say, yeah, we're good. And internally, it really seemed like Spelljammer was completely gone. In 2005, Wizards gave a little love to one of its most infamous baddies, the 45 edition Rules and Lords of Madness, complete with their cultural habits, stat blocks, and a map of a crashed Spelljammer vessel. It was a small nod, but hey, we'll take it. Then came 4th edition, and Spelljammer made another cameo appearance in the Blade World Flames, but again, not that much, and it did seem like the story's bring it back, and the settings return became something of a running joke in the community. Anytime Wizards would go to release new content, you found folks simply shouting Spelljammer, and Wizards fooled the game by sprinkling in little hints across other products, almost like they were testing the waters. And then in 2022, it finally happened. Wizards of the Coast took the plunge and released Spelljammer Adventures in Space 4th Edition. And the reaction? Well, calling it divisive would be a vast understatement. Now, the short version, because I love a good oversimplification, is that many longtime fans felt the 5th version was overly simplified and seriously lacking in world building. Each book was only 64 pages, which was far fewer than other settings got, and that left Spelljammer thin. Then the ship rules themselves were extremely options from no more tinkering with armor, swapping out weapons, or designing your own ships. Then there was just one type of Spelljammer shell instead of a variety of these huge. And on top of all Oh, and also fun fact, Wizards didn't consult Jeff Grubb, the original creator, while developing the 5th version, which we found amusing but not convincing. So that all being said, it wasn't all bad. The art is absolutely stunning, and the books were beautifully produced. The bestiary itself was solid, and included adventures had some really fun moments. On top of that, the simplified ship combat wasn't necessarily a bad idea either for some players. Plus, we got some wild ship designs like a giant space tree, a scorpion ship, and even clown space pirates. In the end, 5e Spelljammer is fine, it's just not quite what some fans had hoped for. But it has to be said, other fans have no problem with it and find 5e Spelljammer limitless. And I think this boils down to modern design philosophies about player convenience, making the players feel powerful and cool. But this is a direct contradiction to classic D&D, which makes a lot of things inconvenient and directly challenging players to adapt and make creative solutions. So I can see how there might be two audiences here. But like with all settings, all it takes is a little homebrew to make it come alive. And you can always make it your own that way. So at least we have that. But if all this 5e drama has you feeling a bit down and you miss the golden age of Spelljammer, don't worry. There's plenty of other Spelljammer goodness from the 90s, just in different formats. Back in the 90s, TSR published a 6-book series set in the Spelljammer universe, collectively known as right? These novels were written by a handful of authors, including none other than Tim Cook. Yes, that Planescape guy I mentioned earlier. The story follows tells a simple farmer from a friend who comes into possession of a powerful magical book. Suddenly, he's thrust into the wild world of space-faring adventures, complete with flying ships and threats and more goodness. Now, you don't need to be familiar with Spelljammer to enjoy it, and the series does stand well enough on its own, though it's certainly more rewarding for fans who want to dive deeper into the setting, and it really gave us felt like Spelljammer and a match made in it. But believe it or not, these weren't the only Spelljammer stories hitting the shelves back in the 90s. Fast enough, but also a bit bizarrely, there were also Spelljammer comic books, 15 in total, that were released in 1990 by none other than DC Comics. Now, I have to admit, I was never able to track down a copy myself, and good luck finding one, either physical or digital, but from what I've heard, the series started off pretty strong, but ran into trouble with constant creative team changes, causing a rapid decline in volume. Now, if any of you out there have read these, I would love to hear your thoughts. And as one last other obscure branch of Spelljammer in the 90s, there was also Spelljammer trading cards, which if any of you have these laying around, hats off to you. Now, speaking of adaptations, you might assume that given TSR's track record with other settings like Dragonlance, Dark Sun, and even but I'm very sad to say that this was not the case, because we only ever got one Spelljammer Pirates of Realm Space in 1992. Now, it did promise space combat and sailing through the cosmos. Now, it did have its own charming retro space combat and third-person flight simulator, where you could fire giant balls from your ship into the distance. But of course, because of the technological limitations of the time, it was pretty limited. But 1990 difficulty, and it's not uncommon to get your entire party tested with pretty quickly. That being said, it's easy to play online, so if you're feeling brave, why not give it a shot? Now, it wasn't until 2002 that we got another Spelljammer experience, this time from a team of freelance modders for Neverwinter Nights, because Neverwinter has everything. It was a mini adventure module which brought some Spelljammer ships, terrains, and creatures into the game. But honestly, for a setting this wild, a real video game adaptation, something triple or even double A, feels criminally overdue. With all of its outrageous physics, cosmic horrors, and delightfully chaotic nonsense, Spelljammer practically begs to be turned into an open-world space fantasy epic. We hit No Man's Sky, we hit Starfield, I want Spelljammer. And who knows, with the massive success of Baldur's Gate 3, it's really possible we might get a wave of these video games, and in the future, hopefully, Spelljammer might be one of them. So where does Spelljammer stand? Well, after the mixed reception of the 5 release, things are a little uncertain. As far as I can find, there hasn't been any news about any more official game supplements on the horizon, although it's definitely not outside the realm of possibility. And that all being said, it's not like the setting has been completely abandoned. As recently as 2024, a novel set in the Spelljammer universe called The Living Wake came out, and it's actually an MP3. It's a fun, tightly written adventure that serves as a great intro to the setting, while also standing on its own. And seriously, I had a blast with it. And even on the video game front, fans haven't been sitting still. There are mods